Gun-woo's mother, Yoon So-yeon, is struggling to pay off debts. She's overwhelmed by the financial burden and is worried about losing their home. Determined to help her, Gun-woo decides to participate in a boxing tournament to win money. He believes that if he can just win the tournament, he can pay off their debts and secure their future. The competition heats up as Gun-woo and Hong Woo-jin emerge as top contenders. Woo-jin is an arrogant but skilled fighter who often talks trash, while Gun-woo is quiet and calculated. Despite Woo-jin's confidence, Gun-woo wins their match, and they later bond over dinner, discovering they both served in the Marines. This shared experience creates a bond between them, and they begin to form a friendship. Meanwhile, Kim Myeong-gil, a ruthless loan shark, is expanding his business. He offers loans with seemingly favorable terms, but includes hidden fees that trap borrowers in debt. Myeong-gil loans money to a businessman for a hotel project, hinting at future complications. He also starts an initiative to pay off people's debts at lower interest rates, but with an extension fee that must be paid within 24 hours, setting up a scheme to exploit desperate individuals. Gun-woo's mother, unaware of the risks, signs a contract with Myeong-gil's men. This decision leads to Myeong-gil's men vandalizing her cafe, prompting Gun-woo to rush to her aid. He faces off against multiple thugs, but is eventually overwhelmed by Kong In-bum, a formidable enforcer. Despite his bravery, Gun-woo is no match for In-bum's strength. Myeong-gil intervenes, marking Gun-woo with a scar as a warning. Myeong-gil uses his charm and charisma to lure people into his debt trap, promising them relief from their financial burdens. However, once they're in, he exploits them mercilessly, using his enforcers to intimidate and control them. Gun-woo and Woo-jin forms an unlikely alliance, driven by their desire to protect those they love and seek justice against Myeong-gil's ruthless organization. Gun-woo is determined to take down Myeong-gil and free his mother from the debt trap, while Woo-jin is motivated by a personal vendetta against Myeong-gil. Meanwhile, Kim Gun-woo is recovering from surgery after receiving 30 stitches for the scar inflicted by Kim Myeong-gil. During his follow-up checkup, the doctor informs him that the wound is healing well and narrowly avoided nerve damage. She suggests plastic surgery to remove the scar, but Gun-woo decides against it due to the high cost. Outside the clinic, Woo-jin waits for Gun-woo and reads through the loan contract signed by Gun-woo's mother. He discovers that Smile Capital, Myeong-gil's company, has conned her. Woo-jin offers to take Gun-woo out for a meal and tries to seek help from one of his friends, who happens to be another loan shark. Gun-woo overhears Woo-jin asking this friend for assistance in paying off his mother's debt. Touched by Woo-jin's willingness to help, Gun-woo follows him to the loan shark's office. At the office, the loan shark proposes hiring both Gun-woo and Woo-jin as bloodhounds, debt collectors tasked with chasing borrowers to recover money. Gun-woo refuses the offer, unwilling to harass poor borrowers, and Woo-jin follows suit. Woo-jin praises Gun-woo's sense of pride and bravery, calling him a true boxer at heart. Later that evening, Woo-jin contacts his senior from the military, Mr. Moon, who works for President Choi Tae-ho, an influential figure who runs an interest-free loan agency aimed at helping those in need. Moon invites both boys for a meeting and explains President Choi's background. He used to work for one of South Korea's biggest loan sharks before leaving to establish his ethical lending agency. Meanwhile, Hyun-ju, President Choi's granddaughter, investigates Smile Capital's operations. She discovers that Young Jae-myung, a borrower connected to Smile Capital, has taken loans worth 400 million won under the names of poor people who had been in prison. Hyun-ju shares this information with her grandfather, urging him not to get involved in such matters anymore. That night, Myeong-gil discusses his actions with his bodyguard Jang-do and justifies slitting Gun-woo's face as a way to assert dominance after being disrespected in front of his men. The next day, President Choi learns about Gun-woo and Woo-jin and requests a lunch meeting with Gun-woo alone. At the restaurant, President Choi interviews Gun-woo and learns about his family situation and financial struggles. He offers Gun-woo a job as Hyun-ju's bodyguard in exchange for 100 million won to pay off his mother's debt. Later that night, one of Choi's men delivers the money to Gun-woo, who gives it to his mother with gratitude. Meanwhile, Myeong-gil meets with Mr. Hong, a wealthy chaebol, and Hong's cousin, a government officer. During their meeting, Hong gets Myeong-gil drunk and threatens him over Smile Capital's financial instability. He warns Myeong-gil that he will use his cousin's influence at the National Tax Agency to investigate Smile Capital if there is any foul play. The next day, Woo-jin accompanies Gun-woo as he begins working for President Choi. Both boys explore Choi's office and discover hidden cash behind cardboard boxes disguised as books in a library room. President Choi leaves them with his credit card for lunch, but warns that if Hyun-ju doesn't hire them both, Gun-woo must pay back the 100 million won. When Hyun-ju arrives at the office, she kicks Woo-jin out but allows Gun-woo to stay after he gets on his knees and begs her for a chance. He explains how Smile Capital conned his mother and expresses his desperation to repay her debt. Hyun-ju agrees to let him stay temporarily and shares details about Smile Capital's fraudulent activities. She reveals that they exploit homeless people by stealing their ID cards under false pretenses of providing government stipends. She tasks Gun-woo and Woo-jin with investigating these men further. Gun-woo and Woo-jin follow Smile Capital agents into a subway station where they witness them deceiving homeless individuals in a handing over their IDs. One elderly homeless man protests when they try to take his card by force. The agents beat him up brutally while Woo-jin prevents Gun-woo from intervening per Hyun-ju's instructions. However, unable to bear watching the violence any longer, Gun-woo rushes forward to stop the thugs as they continue beating the old man until he bleeds. Woo-jin unable to hold, he rushes to join Gun-woo in saving the homeless man. Together, they fight off the goons using their boxing skills, leaving the attackers incapacitated. They call an ambulance to help the injured man, but their actions disrupt Hyun-ju's undercover operation. Furious, Hyun-ju confronts the pair, accusing them of ruining her plan for a random stranger they didn't even know. Woo-jin apologizes and asks for a chance to explain their side in person. Hyun-ju reluctantly agrees to meet them at the library. Later, Woo-jin explains to Gun-woo that apologizing and trying to understand Hyun-ju's perspective is important since they are new to the job. At the library, Hyun-ju lashes out at them again, particularly targeting Woo-jin. She scolds him for jeopardizing her operation, while Gun-woo quietly observes. During this heated exchange, Gun-woo expresses his belief that conning loan sharks like Jae-myung will only lead them to target other innocent small business owners. He emphasizes his desire to help people like his mother. Their discussion is interrupted when Jae-myung and Jun-min arrive outside the library. The trio quickly turns off the lights, seals the gates, and monitors the situation through CCTV cameras. Jun-min suggests breaking down the shutter, but they realize it's made of reinforced metal and notice the CCTV camera watching them. Unable to gain entry, Jae-myung and Jun-min leave. Inside, Woo-jin speculates that Jae-myung did not follow them there intentionally, but warns that they might return with reinforcements. President Choi arrives at the library shortly after and demands answers from Hyun-ju and the boys about what happened. Hyun-ju explains that her goal was to recover money from loan sharks by catching Jae-myung, but admits that their actions inadvertently revealed the library's location. She defends Gun-woo and Woo-jin, stating they were protecting her during the operation. She also shows President Choi Gun-woo's scar and explains how Smile Capital has been exploiting small business owners like Gun-woo's mother. Deeply moved, President Choi asks for details about the man who scarred Gun-woo. When Gun-woo describes Myeong-gil as a man with a scar on his left cheek, President Choi appears shaken, as if recalling a ghost from his past. Later that night, Hyun-ju opens up about her difficult childhood in an orphanage before being taken in by President Choi, who paid for her education and supported her growth. Gun-woo expresses his gratitude toward President Choi for helping repay his mother's debt and vows to protect him at all costs. Meanwhile, Myeong-gil reveals his grand plan to open an illegal casino in South Korea due to pandemic restrictions preventing gamblers from traveling abroad. He intends to use this casino to generate immense profits while secretly recording gambling activities to blackmail Mr. Hong, whose hotel will host the casino, to send a warning to Mr. Hong for humiliating him earlier. Myeong-gil orders his men to brutally assault him. Jang-do and his thugs beat Mr. Hong mercilessly, strip him naked, and film the ordeal as leverage. At night, President Choi reflects on his past with Myeong-gil and Byum, his former employees. Years ago, Myeong-gil betrayed him by stealing from his safe and attacking him during a robbery attempt. In a violent confrontation, Myeong-gil slashed President Choi's face before Byum pushed him out of a window. Though gravely injured, President Choi survived while Myeong-gil fled with stolen wealth. The next day, Woo-jin takes Gun-woo and Hyun-ju to his aunt's pork belly restaurant, but learns that she was attacked by loan sharks seeking repayment of fraudulent debts tied to homeless individuals' IDs. Enraged, Woo-jin calls the loan shark responsible, but is told that Smile Capital orchestrated these scams using fake identities. The trio decides to track down Jae-myung themselves in hopes of exposing him and earning money from Smile Capital's downfall. They follow Jae-myung into a subway station, but are unaware that he has noticed them tailing him. Jae-myung contacts Jun-min and instructs him to send reinforcements immediately. As night falls, Jun-min dispatches an army of thugs to ambush Gun-woo and Woo. Hyun-ju panics and calls President Choi for help, while Gun-woo and Woo-jin prepare for an intense fight against overwhelming odds. Wife before rushing outside, signaling the urgency of the situation. Meanwhile, for getting involved in dangerous situations that could cost them their lives. He warns them to stop wielding a sashimi knife. Myeong-gil grows concerned upon seeing all his injured him for a discussion about their next steps. Yang-young reconnects with Do-young and discusses how they can resolve President Choi's troubles once and for all. Meanwhile, Myeong-gil recounts President Choi's history with 5 knifers. The next day, President Choi instructs Hyun-jo to clear out money from the library despite being handcuffed. She manages to beat him up using her baton before tying him to a pole with his thugs, while carrying duffel bags filled with gold bars and cash. As the thugs close in, they realize they cannot outrun them while carrying the heavy bags. Reluctantly, they leave the bags behind and rush toward Gun-woo, who is waiting in the car. Gugs catch up, Gun-woo starts the car, and they drive off, narrowly escaping. Meanwhile, Yang-young informs President Choi that Myeong-gil has loaned money to influential figures, including policemen and sports people. President Choi is alarmed by how far Myeong-gil's reach has expanded and blames himself for not stopping him earlier. He reveals that Myeong-gil had stolen bonds from him in the past and used them to grow his empire. President Choi reflects on how he gave Myeong-gil a second chance as an ex-convict, but now regrets sparing his life. He apologizes to Yang-young for holding him back from killing Myeong-gil before. Just then, Yang-young receives a call from Gun-woo and the others, who inform him that they lost some of the money from the library safe during their escape. While President Choi is concerned about the money, he prioritizes their safety. Yang-young also updates President Choi about Byum, who was left injured in the library basement. President Choi deduces that Myeong-gil will likely arrange for Byum to be treated in a legal clinic, copying methods Choi himself once used. He tasks Do-young with tailing Byum to locate this underground hospital. At Myeong-gil's hideout, Jang-do reports that Byum is being treated for a busted eardrum. Jang-do also promises to check the license plates of Woo-jin's car once their contact at the police station becomes available. Myeong-gil grows frustrated at their inability to track down the trio faster and orders his men to pay whoever necessary to obtain security footage of their movements. He also warns Jang-do that Do-young will likely come after Byum and instructs him to prioritize killing Do-young over saving Byum. The next morning, President Choi catches Gun-woo returning from a run and scolds him for not resting after such a dangerous mission. During their conversation, Choi reveals that Gun-woo has repaid. He gives Gun-woo the option to leave and start a new life with his mother, but Gun-woo insists on staying until they bring down Myeong-gil. Later, Gun-woo, Woo-jin, and Hyun-ju join Yang-young at his sashimi restaurant for lunch. Do-young arrives as well, and together they discuss their plan to take down Myeong-gil's organization systematically. Yang-young proposes dividing into teams. Hyun-ju and Do-young will target Jun-min to uncover victims tied to Smile Capital, while Woo-jin and Gun-woo will help Yang-young confront Byum and other thugs. Do-young bonds with Hyun-ju over their shared love for motorcycles as they prepare for their mission. Meanwhile, Yang-young trains Woo-jin and Gun-woo in knife combat techniques, emphasizing both offense and defense against knife attacks. That night, Hyun-ju and Do-young tail Junmin's car. After waiting for hours, Do-young finally sees an opportunity and slashes Junmin's throat in one swift motion before driving off on his motorcycle. However, Do-young is soon ambushed by 3 goons who ram his bike with a car. They beat him severely until Hyun-ju arrives just in time to rescue him. Together, they fight off the attackers before calling Yang-young to report their success. Meanwhile, Yang-young leads Gun-woo and Woo-jin to a hospital where Byum is being treated. As they approach the building, Jang-do enters an elevator heading toward Byum's room. Yang-young instructs the boys to take the stairs so they can intercept Jang-do before he reaches his destination. Inside the hospital, chaos erupts as goons riot in response to Junmin's injury and Jang-do's capture. Yang-young manages to subdue Jang-do with duct tape over his mouth and eyes while Woo-jin takes down another thug who notices them. The group brings Jang-do back to Do-young's shop for interrogation. President Choi arrives shortly after and insists that Gun-woo, Woo-jin, and Hyun-ju witness what happens next as part of their education on survival in this dangerous world. Despite their reluctance, they watch as Yang-young uses brutal methods, including a sanding machine followed by salt water, to extract information from Jang-do. Jang-do eventually reveals critical details about Myeong-gil's operations. There are 50 incriminating videos stored in a German-made biometric safe in Myeong-gil's bedroom. The safe has an incineration feature designed to destroy its contents if tampered with. Jang-do also discloses that Mr. Young handles body disposals for Smile Capital using a fish supply truck. Before leaving, President Choi asks about Myeong-gil's hidden gold reserves. Jang-do reveals that only Byum knows where they are stored. Meanwhile, Myeong-gil torture Min Byum, Mr. Hong's cousin, to extract information about Do-young's location. Myeong-gil threatens to leak the humiliating video of Min Byum being stripped naked, which would ruin his family's reputation. Panicked, Min Byum contacts Inspector Min Gang-young, his cousin in the police force, and asks for help. Gang-young begins searching police footage to locate Do-young's bike and track him down. Meanwhile, Gun-woo, Woo-jin, and their allies return to President Choi's house after their recent confrontation with Myeong-gil's men. Do-young warns them about the catastrophic consequences if Myeong-gil succeeds in opening his casino. He explains that Myeong-gil plans to lend money to drug lords and gamblers, which would destabilize South Korea. President Choi reassures the group that if they succeed in their mission, he will reward them with a holiday in Rome. While Myeong-gil prepares his men for an attack by equipping them with knives and bulletproof vests, President Choi and his team celebrate a small victory at his house. Woo-jin drinks heavily and passes out early, while Do-young reveals that his wife is pregnant and decides to return home to her. President Choi shares Hyun-ju's tragic backstory with Gun-woo, explaining how her parents were tortured and killed by Myeong-gil years ago, leaving her orphaned at a young age. Gun-woo expresses gratitude for President Choi's kindness and promises to continue fighting for justice. Inspector Gang-young successfully locates Do-young's shop using police footage and shares the address with Myeong-gil. Early the next morning, Myeong-gil and his men attack Do-young's house while he is asleep. Do-young wakes up and asks his wife to call the police, but decides to confront the intruders himself instead of fleeing. He fights bravely, but is overpowered by Myeong-gil's men. Myeong-gil promises to spare Do-young's wife if he reveals Yang-young's location. However, even after Do-young lies to protect Yang-young, Myeong-gil kills both him and his pregnant wife. Unaware of this tragedy, Gun-woo and the others enjoy breakfast at President Choi's house. President Choi discusses plans for Gun-woo's mother, So-yeon, suggesting she help prepare meals at the shelter for children. Meanwhile, Yang-young heads back to his sashimi restaurant, but is ambushed by Myeong-gil there. Despite putting up a fierce fight, Yang-young is ultimately killed by Myeong-gil using his own sword. Myeong-gil then targets President Choi's house. With only Woo-jin and President Choi present at home, Myeong-gil's men break in. Woo-jin fights valiantly, but is stabbed in the living room during the attack. President Choi retreats to the basement to retrieve a gun, but is overpowered by Byum and other thugs before he can use it effectively. Byum beats him brutally, but leaves him alive for Myeong-gil to finish the job. In a chilling moment, Myeong-gil slashes President Choi's throat after discovering that the safe containing gold was left unlocked. Gun-woo and Hyun-ju return to find President Choi's house engulfed in flames. Hyun-ju frantically searches for President Choi, but discovers that he has died. Gun-woo locates Woo-jin outside the burning house and checks for a pulse, realizing he is still alive. They rush Woo-jin to the hospital, where doctors begin operating on him, but express concerns about a shortage of blood due to COVID-related supply issues. Woo-jin continues bleeding profusely. Despite the doctor's efforts, Woo-jin's condition remains critical due to severe blood loss. Gun-woo is filled with guilt and anger, feeling responsible for Woo-jin's injuries. Meanwhile, Myeong-gil celebrates his victory over President Choi, believing he has eliminated the last major obstacle to his success. However, he becomes increasingly paranoid about potential threats, ordering his men to increase security measures around him. As Woo-jin undergoes surgery, Gun-woo and Hyun-ju discuss their next steps. They realize they need evidence to take down Myeong-gil legally. Hyun-ju remembers that President Choi had mentioned a safe in Myeong-gil's house containing incriminating videos. They decide to break into Myeong-gil's mansion to retrieve this evidence. Gun-woo visits Woo-jin in the hospital, where Woo-jin is still recovering from his injuries. Woo-jin expresses his determination to continue fighting alongside Gun-woo, despite his condition. Gun-woo promises to protect him and vows to bring down Myeong-gil. Later that night, Gun-woo and Hyun-ju sneak into Myeong-gil's mansion. They navigate through the heavily guarded estate, using stealth and strategy to evade detection. Once inside, they locate the safe but find it locked with a biometric fingerprint scanner. Hyun-ju uses her skills to bypass the security system, and they manage to open the safe. Inside, they find a collection of incriminating videos and documents detailing Myeong-gil's blackmail schemes. However, they soon realize that the safe has an incineration feature that will destroy the evidence if tampered with. They manage to disable the incineration mechanism just in time, securing the crucial evidence needed to bring Myeong-gil to justice. As they escape the mansion, they are confronted by Myeong-gil's men. Gun-woo and Hyun-ju fight bravely, but they are outnumbered. Just when it seems like they are about to be overwhelmed, an unexpected ally arrives to help them escape. Kim Gun-woo and Hong Woo-jin determined to bring down Kim Myeong-gil once and for all. They are galvanized by their duty to protect their loved ones and avenge the deaths of President Choi, Deong, and others who fell victim to Myeong-gil's ruthless schemes. Kim Jae-min, a cameo character played by Kim Min-jae, acquires a phone from Myeong-gil. However, Jae-min's boss, Min Gang-yeong, betrays Myeong-gil by ratting him out to the authorities. Upon discovering this betrayal, Myeong-gil sends his men to track down President Choi's remaining allies and eliminate them. Gun-woo and Woo-jin meet an informant who provides critical information about Myeong-gil's operations. They learn that the phone in question contains evidence that could destroy Myeong-gil's empire. However, they also discover that the phone has a feature capable of erasing evidence stored in the safe. To counter this, the duo sets up a trap using a contract signing with Hong Min-byum as bait. During the trap setup, Myeong-gil arrives with 2 phones to avoid detection. Gun-woo and Woo-jin devise a clever plan to hack into one of the phones by connecting it to Wi-Fi during the signing process. They successfully retrieve the incriminating data but destroy the hard drive afterward to prevent further tampering. As they interrogate Kong In-byum, one of Myeong-gil's key enforcers, he bites his tongue in an attempt to avoid spilling information. He is rushed to the hospital, but the team loses him before they can extract more details. Myeong-gil retaliates by launching attacks against Min Gang-yeong, his hacker, and other allies connected to the investigation. Min Gang-yeong is poisoned but survives after vomiting out the toxin. Despite these setbacks, Gun-woo and Woo-jin remain resolute in their mission. The duo receives another call from Myeong-gil, who demands they come to retrieve President Choi's granddaughter, Hyun-ju, whom he has kidnapped. Hyun-ju insists on accompanying Gun-woo and Woo-jin during the rescue mission, showcasing her skills with a bow and arrow. Moon Gwang-moo joins them as reinforcements. At the location where Hyun-ju is held captive, Gun-woo and Woo-jin engage in an intense fight against Myeong-gil's thugs. They overpower the men and manage to take 2 captives, including Kang In-beom. During this confrontation, Myeong-gil becomes impatient and threatens Hyun-ju with a knife. However, she shoots him with an arrow before he can harm her. Injured, Myeong-gil flees as police arrive at the scene to arrest everyone connected to his operation. Although many of Myeong-gil's associates are apprehended, he becomes a wanted fugitive and escapes South Korea. Gun-woo and Woo-jin learn that Myeong-gil has fled aboard a ship bound for Vietnam. With help from Lim Jang-do, Myeong-gil's former right-hand man, they track down the ship's location. On board the ship, Gun-woo faces off against Myeong-gil in a climactic battle. After an intense fight sequence filled with raw emotion and skillful boxing techniques, Gun-woo defeats Myeong-gil decisively. He warns him that if they ever cross paths again, he will kill him without hesitation. Meanwhile, Woo-jin battles Kang In-beom in another fierce fight on the ship and emerges victorious as well. Their triumph marks the end of Smile Capital's reign of terror. In a final twist, Interpol intervenes and arrests Kim Myeong-gil as he arrives in Vietnam. The series concludes with Gun-woo and Woo-jin reflecting on their journey while preparing for brighter days ahead.